Hello, this is a video just to remind everybody that the SUFON site is now changed to www.sufon.co.uk, and just for everybody to know, there's a little trailer at the beginning of this feature. It doesn't last very long, but it's to promote, well, you'll find out when you see it. Thanks for watching.
Don't clap me. Can you hear me at the back? Yeah? Okay, great. Hello? Yeah, well, I would.
What?
Hello?
Where's the microphone, Steve? Microphone.
I haven't got it.
What?
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending here this evening at Swansea UFO Network. I can see we've got a few new members here this evening. Thank you very much for turning up. I hope you've had a warm welcome. Now tonight we've got a real treat for you, because I'm very proud to be able to introduce Mr. Alan Foster, who's next to me here. Mr. Foster's career encompasses many years in the airline industry. He managed an airline travel operation providing commercial transport for the US military in the UK, and then for the Mediterranean US Naval Forces, where he was based at the Fleet Headquarters Naval Base at Naples in Italy. He's also worked in aircraft operations in an international airport. Now, Mr. Foster is a writer, a researcher, an international lecturer on topics including UFOs, crop formations, meditation, metaphysics, environmental and spiritual issues, including the Turin Shroud and angels. He's also on the advisory board of the Exopolitics Institute. Am I sure he's heard all this before? His in-depth research has taken him to over 80 countries worldwide. There's not many of us who can boast having been to 80 countries. I don't think there's probably anyone here who can. Now, in order to raise public awareness of these issues, Alan regularly lectures to UK organisations and community groups, and at international UFO and crop formation conferences. Now, I understand that in 1973 he actually had his own UFO encounter, which encouraged him to pursue his studies into the various different aspects of research that he has undertaken. He has a background of 40 years in UFO studies and 19 years at least in crop formation study. And whilst I'm absolutely sure he could entertain you on a variety of topics that would be of immense interest to the members of this club, tonight he's going to address you on the subject of crop formations and UFOs. Well, you haven't come to listen to me, so without further ado, please put your hands together, give a warm SUFON welcome, Mr. Alan Foster. Thank you, Alan.
Right, that's all done. Okay, hello everybody. Can you hear me okay at the back? Yeah, brilliant. So, I would normally do an introduction, but thanks to Steve, he's already done that, so
Sorry.
we won't bother with that. And Emlyn also mentioned, what I'll do is I'll do the first part of the talk is probably about 50 minutes. So then at the end of that, if we have a break of about 20 minutes, you know, in the middle part, and then come back, and then I'll do the final part of the talk, which is about 20-25 minutes. And then if we've got time, Emlyn, at the end, if you've got any questions about anything you've seen today, about the crop formation subject, ufology, etc., you know, I'd love to have any questions at the end, if that's okay. So, most of you are familiar with crop formations, of course, and they basically began in the sort of early to mid 1980s, initially with simple circles with rings, then sort of moving Celtic cross style formations. But it wasn't until this formation appeared in 1990 at the Eastfield in Alton Barnes in Wiltshire that people from around the world started to take notice of this. You know, people started then come to the UK. They realised something was going on here as this sort of you know, developed. Now, it was also at that time that the hoaxing was then pushed forward, probably by the media, that, you know, these were all made by Doug and Dave with ropes and planks of wood, etc. But also, interestingly enough, is when the first scientific research began looking into the crop formations. And there was a group called the BLT group, which stands for John Burke, Levin Good and Nancy Tolbert. These were a group of professional scientific consultants involving people like biophysicists, analytical chemists, geochemists, mineralogists, people like this, based in the States. These are professional scientific consultants. And they were looking at the samples that were sent through to them, you know, from the crop formation, within the formation, or, you know, beyond it, control samples beyond. What they found was that the genuine formations, the crop was actually going through a change in its cellular structure. It's as though the crop was being superheated up to about 800 degrees C in a fraction of a second. So any moisture within the crop was basically causing the crop to become malleable, so these images could be downloaded in a matter of seconds. Also, the incredible thing that happened was that many of the formations actually had a bend at the node or the knuckle on the stem of the crop. As you can see here, this is a normal stem in a control sample, or, you know, out in the rest of the field, in other words. And then many of them have an elongation of the node, but also a bend at that node. Again, that's impossible to do that with ropes and planks of wood, and yet with no damage. Sometimes this was about a foot off the ground. So incredible. Another thing that happened was, with the genuine formations, often there'd be anomalies, and the things like compasses would spin wildly within a formation, but would work again as you came outside. Also, batteries in cameras, like that one in a minute, they would fail within the formation, but actually work as you came back out again. And this would happen even to like the you know, BBC and people like that, you know, professional groups that would go in. These expensive cameras could fail in a formation, so it showed there was a very powerful energy within the genuine formations. Now, as they progressed, this was the following year. That was 1990 at the Eastfield in Alton Barnes, which is sort of a Mecca area where they appeared. The following year, this formation appeared in 1991 below Barbury Castle, which is an ancient hill fort south of Swindon. Now, the night that appeared, there were a group of people doing a night watch, and they said during the night they saw a large triangular UFO that appeared above a field that shone a beam of light down into the field. The following day they went to have a look at what was there, and they came across this particular formation. Now they felt that the general feeling was that formation related to. Is that all right if we stop with the camera now? Sorry, mate. It's just it's just putting me off a bit. Sorry, no. What they felt was that the crop formation actually related to the fact that there should be a balance between mind, body, and spirit, which of course there should be. Now, the amazing thing about this formation is that it also relates into ufology as well. Now, some of you have probably seen these amazing UFOs known as sort of ships of light, or the plasma craft or jellyfish craft, that have been seen in Tepoztlan, south of Mexico City. This photograph was taken in 1981 by Carlos Diaz, and it's estimated there's probably up to about 12,000 people that have actually seen them in that sort of sacred valley where these UFOs appear. This is another one as well, taken by a different witness. So you can see, you know, these are incredible objects, probably about 30 foot across, but it's believed they're highly advanced, sentient, thinking, organic technology. Now Carlos, he was taking lots of photographs of these craft, and he then was given a video camera by Jaime Maussan, the Mexican researcher, so that he could sort of record this. This was an amazing event. On one of the occasions, on the 11th of January 1998, he was actually filming one of these objects, and he was taken on board. And the beings that he was sort of liaising with were either human types, looking like us, or sort of energy beings. Anyway, they took him on board this craft, and then he said he went into the nearby mountains and was actually taken into a cavern system, a huge cave basically in the mountains. And while he was in there, he was actually still filming with the camera, and one of these objects was hovering below him in this massive cave. It shone a beam of light down, and at the rock just below the UFO was an image exactly the same as that crop formation that you just saw, which had appeared back in 1991. So of course that stimulated him to become aware of the crop formations as well, once he understood where that had come from. But it was also interesting because of the concept that people felt it related to. The beings that he spoke to here said that it's important that we realise that everything is connected. You know, and that is from simple things like a blade of grass, to the oceans, to the whales and dolphins, to solar systems, galaxies, and then beyond that to sort of higher dimensional reality. All things are connected. So basically everything you think and everything you do has an effect. So this is sort of powerful information. Now, going on from that, the next sort of really beautiful formation that appeared. This appeared on the 7th of July 1996, just below Stonehenge. So you can see Stonehenge at the top. That's the busy A303 road just underneath. And then below that, in that field, that massive formation, it was known as the Julia set. But it's about 900 feet long with over 190 circles. So a huge formation. But what's amazing about that is there are quite a few witnesses that will say they know that that appeared within about a 20-minute time frame during the middle of a busy Sunday afternoon. There were security guards that were doing their rounds of Stonehenge, and they said, you know, for those that have been, you know, as you can actually see down onto the road in the field below from Stonehenge. So they said they did their rounds of Stonehenge. About 20 minutes later they came back, and there was, as they look now, was this massive formation there. So they hadn't seen anything happen. There was also a pilot of a light aircraft that was actually flying people around the ancient stone sites, just to show them the stone sites. And he was flying around Stonehenge and then up at Avebury Stone Circle just up the road. And he said he flew around Stonehenge, landed at a nearby airfield, picked up some more people, flew back to Stonehenge, and this time as he returned, which is only about 20 minutes from the last time he was there, that massive formation was in the field below. And he said there is no way would that have been there 20 minutes before. So this added weight to the fact that the genuine formations are probably appearing in a matter of seconds or certainly minutes as these images are downloaded, but nobody saw anything. Now this was amazing, this sort of single spiral. Then about a week later another one appeared, but initially this one here, the energy in that was incredibly powerful. That's the sort of an illustration by my wife who actually saw this. We went into that one. A lot of the formations are actually, or the genuine formations in the sort of the Wiltshire, Hampshire area, quite a few of them have been on top of ley lines. So some researchers felt that perhaps the energy within the ley line was being utilised as a part of the creative force. But that particular one, a lot of researchers said they found that incredibly powerful. I mentioned the sort of electrical effects earlier on, but a lot of people would go into this and they could actually feel the energy with their hands. Certainly with dowsing rods you can sort of feel the energy flowing within the formations. But she sort of psychically saw these like vortexes or plumes of energy coming out the centre of these circles with these little orbs of light. I've shown that at quite a few other conferences, and there are many other researchers who said when they saw that, they said that's exactly what we saw, and we also feel that was one of the most powerful formations as far as energy is concerned. So as I say, that appeared in 7 July 96, and about a week later appeared a triple spiral. That's when this one appeared. This is a huge formation. This is about 1,000 feet across, and you can see it sort of straddling into two fields. It was about a couple of miles down the road from the Avebury Stone Circle in Wiltshire, at a place called Windmill Hill, funnily enough. But you can see it's a huge formation. It's about 1,000 feet across. The tram lines where the tractors spray the crops is about sort of 70 feet, 20 odd metres between each tram line. So they are absolutely massive. Now, this was one of those sort of first ones in that early journey where it started to show sort of a three-dimensional geometry within what is like a 2D image. So if you look at the first, the circle in the middle, and you look at the first three circles around it, from above it creates a perfect equilateral triangle. And then the next three, and the next three, and so on and so forth, until you get to the last three. It sort of creates this like spiraling vortex of equilateral triangles getting bigger or smaller, depending on how you look at it. But also, this was the time they're still sort of battling with the early, you know, media hype that all of these are created by ropes and planks of wood. A lot of the centres of this one, at the point where supposedly the pole would be there for, you know, to do the ropes, as you can see, if you see the little dots in the middle of those, look, that's a couple of people standing in the middle there. They, the centres of all of these basically had different standing centres. So at the place where supposedly the plank should be, or sorry, the pole, they would either have standing crop. The crop would be splayed like a fan. Sometimes it was sort of like down into like a little corn dolly or a sort of a crown effect within the crop. So, you know, this is sort of showing there's no way could you create that in just those few hours of darkness. I mean, something like that would probably take you days to create. Now, this has now stepped this up to that sort of, you know, the threefold spiral there. And then in August of 2001, an even bigger one, a six-fold formation appeared. That's when that one there appeared. This is absolutely massive. This appeared up on the top of a place called Milk Hill at Alton Barnes in Wiltshire, which is that sort of Mecca area where a lot of these appear. And at that time that appeared, there were a lot of people doing night watches, you know. It's been sort of 15 years of the formations. So nearly every night, people were out doing night watches. And once again, nobody saw anything, and just the following morning, this massive formation was there. Now it's about 800 feet across, with over 400 circles in that formation. I mean, it's so big that actually the media, particularly the local media, were quite complimentary about this, because they realised that to create that in just those few hours of darkness, you'd have to create each one of those circles within about 30 seconds. So just to give you an idea of how hard that would be, if you look at the central circle in the middle there, which is a similar size to many others there, that's a photograph that I took within the central circle. That's with the camera on a raised tripod, sort of looking down. And you can see the centre of the circle is here, look. It's absolutely massive. That's just one circle. Then you've got one of the arms going out there, one of the other arms going out there. But you can also see that it's not a flat canvas. You know, again, unless you actually go in the formations, you don't realise that in many cases they're not just flat. You can see like a dip in the land here, and on the right the field actually drops over the edge, and yet from above this image is perfect. Often the land is sloping, or you'll have a new formation that's pristine inside, particularly if it's, like I said earlier on, you know, bent at the node or the knuckle. And as you walk on the tram line to get to it, your feet are covered in sort of heavy clay and everything. And when you step in, you know, it feels quite blasphemous to actually damage this beautiful formation. But it adds weight again to the fact that they are appearing really quickly without human intervention. These are the genuine ones, of course. Now, after we'd been in there, in that formation, we then went down to the east field below. There was another formation down there just as it was getting dark, and while we were in there, my wife psychically felt that there was a presence within the formation with us. By that I mean like a spirit that was actually there sort of observing us within the formation, and she psychically saw this presence as an orb. So she pointed out where it was, so I actually took a photograph in that direction, even though I couldn't see it with the physical eyes, and it actually came up with this picture. You can clearly see that's quite a dense orb, and that's within the formation. You can see the formation behind it at the back. Now, what is interesting is that this is taken with an ordinary camera, with ordinary film. This isn't digital. I'm sure most of you in here are familiar with the orbs phenomena, and you know, the research that's gone into that. But a lot of people, when they sort of debunk it, say that they believe it's a fault within the digital technology, which is why this is appearing. But when the orbs started to appear, it was probably, you know, in the middle 1990s, around 95-ish onwards, where people started to see the orbs in images. At that time, of course, a lot of people were still using ordinary cameras and ordinary film, as this was. So, you know, that discounts the digital side of it. A lot of people felt the reason we were starting to see the orbs is that, you know, again, discounting things like raindrops, snowflakes, dust, light refraction, etc. We were actually seeing spirits, and, you know, the sort of the core energy of a spirit, a ghost, a poltergeist, a guide or a guardian or an angel. And a lot of people felt because we were at a transition point, you know, that the veil was thinning. This is the reason why we're starting to see, like, into that next dimension. But the orbs that have been, in relation to the crop formations, there's been a lot of orbs that have been seen that seem to have something to do with it, in a technological sense, either as some sort of creative technology or also as an observational technology. But this is not the sort of the see-through orbs. These are actually balls of light that you can physically see flying around a field, which a lot of people have photographed and filmed. In some cases where they fly along the field and then drop into the formation, then fly back out again. There's other film footage some of you may have seen taken in '96 at the snowflake formation near Oliver's Castle in Wiltshire, where there were 4 balls of light flying around a field, and then suddenly an image, a crop formation, collapsed underneath these balls of light, and then 2 of them flew off through a hedge. They went across another field, through another hedge, and then off into the distance, without slowing as they went through these hedges. Now again, you know, that there are people that have debunked that, but I actually saw that footage not long after the formation had appeared. This was back in '96. And you know, at that time it was believed you couldn't have back engineered this, because it appeared on the Saturday, and this guy was showing the picture of these orbs, you know, flying around. It was only when he started to show people he realised it was actually a formation was appearing as well. So at that time this felt like this is the evidence, you know, the fact that there is some sort of energy that creates the genuine formations. Now, again, like I say, with the orbs, again, I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. Here, as an example, this is actually a photograph that was taken in a place. It used to be a mental hospital, and it had lain, a Victorian mental hospital, and it had been left derelict for a long period of time. And then they started to renovate it to make it into flats and apartments. And at the time, as this started to happen, and then once people were moving in, a lot of people were having ghost and poltergeist activity that was going on there. My wife and I were actually asked to try and help in relation to that, to try and help these lost souls. So I think it was like the renovation work stimulated this sort of activity that was going on, that because that place had remained dormant for quite a long period of time. But as I say, with the crop formations, it's as though it's a technology that's involved. Now, certainly the military are fully aware of that. Over the years, myself, many other researchers have been. There've been interactions with helicopters. In some cases, they actually harass people. They come so close. There was one we were in 1996, the double helix of DNA formation. That a helicopter came so close you could actually see the faces of the pilots as they were above. It's really quite threatening. And in that same formation, one of the researchers at the time, as she came out of the formation, she went up to her car, and just as she was about to start it, suddenly a helicopter came up from below and sort of buzzed. The blades were spinning so close above her head, she was screaming, and all the dust and everything was flying about all over the place. She jumped into her car, drove down the hill, and she was chased by this helicopter. In fact, she's to this day she's frightened of dragonflies, you know, because the way they sort of fly with that erratic movement. You know, this goes on. You know, you never hear this in the media when they're debunking this subject. But you know, for some reason, whoever's given the order, you know, to threaten and to scare the researchers looking into the genuine crop formations. We've also seen a helicopter chasing one of these orbs. A lot of people have as well, and they've filmed it. So yeah, they're not only aware of the formations. Again, there's hoax formations, you know that, but there's also genuine ones as well, and they've been sort of monitoring that. Not forgetting, of course, that where the vast majority of formations appear are in a sort of a triangular area in Wiltshire, Hampshire, south of Swindon, and that's right where you've got Salisbury Plain, you've got Boscombe Down and Porton Down, these sort of big military bases. But this actually happened. Where we were living in Somerset, this was at the end of June in 2011, and where we lived, as you look down into the valley below, it wasn't that far north of Yeovilton, the Naval Air Station, and of course Bristol Airport behind us. But as we were looking late at night, it was just getting dark, you know, at the sort of the middle of summer, we could actually see a lot of helicopter activity in the valley below, and these helicopters were moving backwards and forwards as though they were looking for something. Then at one stage I went round to the south side of the house, and as I looked up I saw a helicopter approaching as close as this illustration here, and I was sort of watching it, and then as I looked I realised right in front of it was an orb about as big as that. That's the moon. This is an artist's impression, but you know, and I sort of watched as this helicopter was just literally following this orb. So I ran around the side of the house because my wife had been watching as well at what was going on down below, just to say, look, an orb. But thankfully she had already seen it and she had the binoculars and she was actually, you know, following, having a look at this. It really helps, again, as you know, if you have somebody that sees something amazing to sort of corroborate, you know, your story. So it really helps. But again, I would estimate it was probably about that big. This ball of light, and there is no doubt, because it was right in front of the flight deck, you know, the crew definitely would have seen this object and they were definitely following it. So once again, military or black ops, whatever, are fully aware of this subject and these unusual objects. What they have concluded they are, I don't know, but you know, they certainly know that they're around and or part possibly of the creative force in relation to genuine crop formations. Now, over the years, the formations, you know, there's many different types, from sort of life forms, spiritual, religious images, very complex geometry and advanced mathematics, things like that. But a lot of the formations started to, this was a formation that appeared in 1999, they started to become really complex, not just the image, but the actual lay of the crop, which again, of course, you know, when at that time everybody believed it's just ropes and planks of wood, how you can actually weave crop to look like this is amazing. And also, if you notice the circles there, they're actually standing crop. Once again, it would be a lot easier to indent circles, but to actually have it as standing crop is pretty amazing. This is actually the only photograph of that formation there is, because basically within a few hours of that appearing and that image being taken, the farmer actually came in and cut the image out within the crop. So, you know, before anybody could actually have a look at it on the ground, which is a real shame. Now, then this formation appeared in July of 2000, known as the magnetic field formation for obvious reasons. And, you know, it's very much like when we were at school, we had the, you probably remember, you had that bit of paper with the iron filings, exactly, and you put a magnet underneath and it would immediately, they would sort of stand up and you see the effect of the magnetic field, so it's like that. But what is amazing is that this appeared in July 2000. This was at the time that NASA had concluded that there is a real problem with the Earth's magnetic field and there are effects around the planet and that the magnetic field may flip fairly soon. In the following year, this is 2000, the following year there was a guy called Graham Ennis that contacted Graham Birdsall, who was the editor of the UK's UFO magazine, and he contacted him to say that he was actually working with scientists researching electrogravitics and advanced propulsion systems, and he contacted him to say that scientists at NASA and elsewhere had determined that the Earth's magnetic field was imminently due to flip, and this was based on comparable satellite data from 1980 through to 2000, plus other data as well. He said, "The process has begun and is irrevocable. It's going to happen, and this is concentrating the minds at NASA more than any other project you can name. Its initial effects will manifest extreme changes in the weather," which we've got, certainly last time I came here we did, with huge global superstorms, and will probably flip by about 2020. And I mean, I certainly know there's one airport in Florida where they've actually had to renumber, you know, the letters as you land, you know, 2709, whatever. They've actually changed the numbers because there's an effect of the magnetic field even on the solid runway to change the effect. So this is definitely going on in various places around the world. Graham Bursell didn't release that information out into the wider world until the following year in 2002 because he didn't want to scare people. But it just shows, this is another thing, you know, crop formations aren't just pretty pictures. Over the years of that long journey, they were often to give, you know, powerful messages. And a lot of people felt that that's what was going on here. You know, it was saying, look at your magnetic field for obvious reasons. Now, not only that, but they also do have an effect. I mentioned earlier about the fact that compasses can spin wildly within the formation, batteries can fail, but also, and certainly dowsers, as I say, you know, many dowsers will go and the rods will turn in the direction of the flow, whatever. People can detect it with their hands. Some formations are really sort of a beautiful feeling, that are really sort of calm and peaceful. Others actually have a very negative energy to them, etc. But I know of two people that have said they actually saw a flock of pigeons flying towards a formation, and as it approached the formation, the flock actually split in two, flew around the formation, and then rejoined again on the other side, and then continued on. Which seemed to show the fact that there must be a large dome of energy above the genuine formations. Certainly, of course, pigeons are birds that navigate using the magnetic field, so it makes a lot of sense. But even Steve Alexander, who's taken a lot of these images I'm showing you tonight, he said that he's flown over some formations with the helicopter, sort of low over the formation, and as he's gone over, the instruments in the helicopter have gone erratic as he goes over the formation, but then they clear up again as he goes beyond. So this is adding weight to the fact that the genuine formations have a large dome of energy above them, and we can only assume that also goes down into the earth below. Of course, you know, we also, for these formations, we have our, you know, our bread and our beer and things like that. So, you know, what effect that has, it's hard to say. Over the years as well, there have been many images that relate to sort of spiritual reality and religious images as well, which is sort of... For the people of the world, which I believe it is, then it makes sense that they would cover all areas, you know, to include all people, and that includes the sort of spiritual and religious imagery as well. This appeared in 1997, and this is the Tree of Life from the Kabbalah. Then the following year, in July of 1998, this formation appeared at a place called Woodborough Hill near Alton Barnes in Wiltshire, and it's actually it's a beautiful formation. This is another one where you can see the lay of the crop. It's not just sort of swirled round. It actually has a pattern by the way the crop is laid and how it captures the light. Now, what is amazing about this image is, you can see a couple of people in there. There were some Native Americans who were also doing research into the crop formations, and they said when they saw this, they were shocked, because this actually, in their tradition, in the Native American tradition in America, this relates to what is the equivalent of revelation as we know it, a revealing. So it's a very powerful symbol, including even the pattern within it. And it also appeared not long after the birth of the white buffalo calf, which again was a very powerful sort of message for Native Americans that was saying, you know, we are at a major transition point. So this sort of added even more weight when they saw this. Now this formation appeared in 1999, and it appeared at a place called Cairn, which is just down the road from the Avebury Stone Circle in Wiltshire, in that sort of Mecca area where many of the formations have appeared. They have appeared in over 42 different countries all over the world, but certainly the vast majority and the complex formations have appeared in that triangular area in Wiltshire, Hampshire, you know, over those years. But this formation here, above it in the hill, you've got the White Horse there, and just off camera on the right, there's actually an obelisk there, and that obelisk marks the spot where Marconi sent his first radio transmissions in the UK back in 1898, which of course is the beginning of radio transmissions. So it's quite interesting, in the place where these formations, or the Mecca area for these formations appearing, is a place where the first sort of communication, the beginnings of communication were actually sent from that area. So it sort of makes sense then when you start looking at this as possibly a SETI message. Now, from basically the mid-80s onwards, through the 90s, through to about 2000, people were seeing, there were messages were being given, there was clearly something going on, and people were saying, what is this? It relates to changes on Earth, etc. But is it like a SETI communication? But it was in 2000 where that was really answered, and over the next couple of years, it was definitely answered that this was like a SETI communication. Now, you all know the SETI program, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, which uses radio telescopes around the world to hopefully listen into a signal that comes from space, from an advanced civilization. Now, of course, the SETI program is run by NASA, and of course NASA is run by the military. So, it's very likely that if we even did receive an intelligent communication via radio waves into a telescope, that they would cover it up, they wouldn't tell us about it. So that was the general feeling, is that, with crop formations, this is something for the people of the world. And that was really proved in August of 2000, right next to that radio telescope, which is at Chilbolton, south of Andover in Hampshire, appeared this formation here. Now, that's the telescope, that's on government land, and right into the field next to it appeared this formation. But it really, if you notice, it really mimics the dish of the telescope with the antenna in the middle, and then with this sort of graphic of like a planetary or sort of communication going into the dish. This is a close-up of that. You can see what I mean. It's got like the dish with the antenna, and then sort of planetary or cosmic communication going into the dish. So this is when this sort of stepped up, and people were saying this is like a SETI communication, but by appearing in the field next to the telescope, it's saying this is for the people, not to be hidden away. Then the following year, of course, it became definitive when these two formations appeared. So that's the radio telescope. The formation that you just saw appeared just here, and then these two appeared. Now, the one at the top is like a face, a human or humanoid face, but you can only see it from the air when you look down on it. The other one, this one here, is pointing straight at the radio telescope, is actually based on a binary code message that was sent into space by the SETI program back in November 1974. And yet it's got anomalies in it. And of course the anomalies are the classic communication. It's what you would look at, to see the message. So initially, if you look at the face, the further back you are, or if you squint your eyes slightly, that it sort of brings out the more three-dimensional aspect to that of like a human or humanoid face. You've got the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the chin, etc. It's very much like a black and white newspaper, where you have white paper, black dots. If it's close up you can't see it, but as you pull away then you see the face of somebody you recognise. It's like that. This is made up of hundreds of circles of standing crop. That's just one corner, look. Ranging from probably about a foot across here through to about 4 feet here. But also the crop itself isn't crushed or broken, it actually flows around the circles. So this is very organic, and when you're standing in it, the crop comes up, all of this, the crop generally comes up to about the top of your thigh. So as you look along that field, you haven't got a clue what that image is until you see it from above. Now the other one, that's about probably about 250 feet in length, with over 100 again squares and oblongs of standing crop. Now, like I say, this was based on a binary code message that was sent in November 1974 into space from the Arecibo radio telescope, which up until recently was the world's largest telescope. As you can see, it's actually based in the mountains in Puerto Rico. That's a helicopter landing pad. That's the admin buildings. Gives you an idea of the size of this thing. And this message that was sent, this is a translation of that here, and then next to it is a block form, so you can compare to the crop formation in a minute and see the differences. But initially, the message that they sent, I'll just sort of highlight some of the areas on it. Basically, at the bottom, it had a little mini graphic of the Arecibo radio telescope with the dish and the antenna, where this message was sent from. above it, you've got the planetary system with the third planet out raised up, saying this is the planet we live at, which of course is Earth, the planet with life on it. And above that you have the human figure. Then above that you have the DNA double helix, number of nucleotides in DNA, formulas for sugars and bases in nucleotides of DNA, atomic numbers for oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, etc. This is an intelligent communication sent in binary code into space. So if you now look at the block form there, which is here, and now if you zigzag backwards and forwards, as you look, the more you look at it, you'll start to see that the actual formation has anomalies. It's not exactly the same, and that is what you would look at, of course, for the classic communication. Now there are quite a lot in there, but I'll just highlight some of them for you. One of them is the DNA structure is more advanced, and certainly with the hybridization program that's going on, where people are being taken, having genetic material removed, the hybrid race being created between ET and human, it's believed that the DNA structure is more advanced. They're sort of being provable now, you know, with people on Earth, etc. You've got, instead of the human figure below it, you've got on the actual formation, you've got an image there of what looks like the classic grey, you know, sort of the small being with the large head with the big eyes, the small body. Below it, instead of just the Earth raised up here, you've got three areas raised up, saying that there is life in all of these. First, of course, is Earth, as we know, full of life. Next to that is Mars, and I mean, it's now well known that Mars used to have vast rivers, lakes and oceans on it. There's a lot of frozen water on Mars already. There are photographs, even from the Viking orbiter and lander onwards, that show what looked like vegetation on Mars that seems to expand in the summer and contract in the winter. And there are pyramidal structures. Again, I'm sure a lot of you heard of that at Cydonia. It's believed that possibly in the ancient past there was an advanced civilization that lived on Mars. But again, anomalies there. And then beyond that, you've got four little dots which probably relate to the four Galilean moons. Certainly Europa, the ice world, it's believed it has liquid water underneath. Many microbiologists and astronomers now believe that there could well be microbiological life at least in the liquid water under the ice cap at Europa. So again, if we're looking at this as an actual communication, it is acknowledging that there is life on, you know, more than just the Earth within our own solar system, let alone of course out into the galaxy or the universe. But the pièce de résistance of this particular formation is at the bottom, because what it's actually got is a little mini graphic of the crop formation that appeared there the year before, the one that I just showed you that had the dish in the middle with that sort of planetary and cosmic stuff going on either side. And obviously the original message was acknowledged coming from the Arecibo telescope. Here it's believed what it was trying to say is that ETs are already here, which of course they are. So this had now stepped up beyond the one from the year before, was sort of like, you know, flat, one-dimensional. Now you're talking 2D here with the binary, and then the following year, just 8 miles down the road, now underneath a bank of microwave towers, and the SETI program looks into the microwave spectrum as well as the radio spectrum, appeared like a three-dimensional photographic image, and that's when this appeared. Now again, I'm sure many of you have seen that before, but you know, the further back you are, or if you squint your eyes, it actually brings out an even more three-dimensional, like photographically real image with that, of a classic grey. The microwave towers are about here, and it's made up of many, many lines of just depressed crop, which actually create this photographic image. You've also got, I mean, as I say, the further back you'll notice this, like even the right cheek of the being is sort of shaded, you know, so just as you'd have with it being lit from the left. How you'd even do that within the formation, I don't know. It's believed that these are probably meant to represent 3 UFOs beyond its shoulder. You've got the classic there, you like the sternum on the chest, but also, as you can see, he's holding up a disc. Now this appeared round about the 25th anniversary of the Voyager probe, the one that went out into space, that had that golden disc on board, with people speaking, music playing, children talking, greetings in 54 Earth languages. So, you know, for it to be holding up a disc, a lot of people looked at that as though this has got to be a communication. Now some people look at it as though it's just circles, but it is actually a spiral of crop that flows from the centre in an anti-clockwise direction and then ends up sort of coming out at the bottom. Now I actually walked that, and it took me about 15 or 20 minutes to walk that spiral. So if you straighten it out, that must be the equivalent of a mile in length. If you have a look, there's a car at the top there, look, just to give you an idea of the size of these things. This is about 350 feet in length, but it's on a sloping field. So how you'd create even a spiral on a sloping field at night, you know, it's hard enough to even do a spiral in a computer. But what's even more complex is, if you notice, all the dark areas on there are standing crop and all the light areas are laid crop, but wherever you go within the spiral, they all point into the centre. So this is incredibly complex, as you can imagine. So basically some researchers sort of saw that as a disc, like a CD disc in effect, plotted it into the computer using an ASCII code, and it actually comes up with a message. It supposedly says, "Beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain but still time. Believe there is good out there. We oppose deception. Conduit closing." Now that is an incredible message. There are many people who feel that the Greys are here to help us as we're going through these incredible environmental and technological changes on Earth. Other people feel that in fact they are, like the message says, classic deceivers. They are here to take genetic material from us and monitor or even affect us from behind the scenes, manipulate things from behind the scenes. And they're not to be trusted. Now I personally would go along with the latter. I would not trust these beings. But once again, as we near disclosure, and once disclosure happens, people are going to start to look at the UFO reality, the ET reality. It's very clear there's, you know, way more than a dozen races interacting with us. People are going to have to choose themselves within their own heart what they believe or who they believe, from their own personal experience, as you will. So it is a very complex subject, but as I say, this is sort of being highlighted once again through the crop formations. What is amazing is, I mean, this became very clear that that was like a SETI communication. You know, in any other world, like the movie Contact, you know, this would have been regarded as absolute SETI communication. But what is incredible is at the Chilbolton array, where the first two messages appeared, more recently, in September of 2010, by that time, they'd actually built a massive new radio telescope at that location, just behind the big telescope in the field beyond. But it's actually based on dipoles, simple dipoles. It's called LOFAR, which stands for the Low Frequency Array. And just to say what it is, it's basically a radio telescope working at the lowest frequencies accessible from Earth, combining simple dipole receivers with high-tech computing, and it's able to survey wide areas of the sky all at once. That opens up a new window for astronomers, but it's also connected to other stations through Europe, so which you can open up the whole of Europe as a radio telescope basically. It's so sensitive that they say they can even detect dust in the sky, but certainly like space junk, spanners up in there, it's believed possibly they can also track UFOs when they pass through the beams. But it is ironic that at the location, the classic location of a SETI communication, they end up building an even bigger telescope array. You know, there are rumours, of course, that the guys that worked there had pictures of those up on their walls, but, you know, they're not going to talk about it. Now, over the years, there have been, like I say, many different formations covering many different topics. One of them was life forms as well. This is a beautiful formation that appeared in August of 2003. This appeared just below a place called Adam's Grave near Milk Hill at Alton Barnes in Wiltshire. But what was amazing about this is it's believed that it's meant to represent the swallows, which are the birds that actually fly along and take either insects or droplets of water from things like streams or ponds, things like that. And then, you know, you'll have droplets of water coming off their beak or their wings. So it's sort of depicting that. But it was beautiful because as you look down at it, you can see it actually, there was a dip in the field, quite a sharp dip down and then back out. and it's as though they were flying into that dip and then flying out, as they actually do when they take water. So that the dip was there, and it's as though they were flying in and then flying back out. It was only after the formation had appeared, upon research, it was realised that in that dip there was actually underground water below it. So it's as though it was highlighting that through that particular image. Since then, a lot of people have looked at the fact that underground water is also quite often present around formations as well as sort of ley lines, but also the water as well. Some people wonder whether that has an effect, you know, as part of the creative energy as well from the water. This is another beautiful formation that appeared. This appeared in May of 2009, and it appeared just next to an ancient hill fort called Wayland Smithy, which was just on the east of Swindon. Beautiful jellyfish, massive great jellyfish, and it's about 600 feet long, this. But once again, you know, there's more than just this image here, because a lot of people have actually been seeing jellyfish type craft in the sky. They're called sky medusa, but particularly in Mexico. I'm sure some of you have seen the footage over Mexico City. People have been seeing these things. They're like giant jellyfish, but out of them are coming these sort of orbs of light. In some cases there are more orbs coming out of it than the size of the jellyfish itself. It's quite incredible. This is another one, illustration by my wife here. This is based on an incident that happened in Cape Town, where once again there was this massive jellyfish, and then there were these orbs of light flying around. People were actually phoning into a talk radio station as this was going on, so other people could actually look out their windows and see this and corroborate what was going on. But as I showed you earlier, you know, there's more going on here than sort of the normal 3D world. I showed you the plasma craft, the jellyfish craft from Mexico earlier on, that orangey yellow craft that have been seen by thousands of people. There's also the ones over Mexico. I know someone who living in Slough, West London, actually saw what was like a manta ray, a giant manta ray, slightly see-through, but flying over quite a built-up area. Really strange. And this person, you know, would never lie about something like that. But there's also the STS footage, the space shuttle footage you may have seen, you know, the NASA transmissions, where in February 1996, STS-75 was that space shuttle that was dragging, it had a tether linked to a satellite that it was pulling around the atmosphere. And the tether broke, and then the satellite sort of drifted slowly away from the space shuttle. When it was about 70 miles towards a sort of 100 miles away from them, from the film footage, suddenly the whole sky seemed to fill up with what looked like jellyfish or plankton sort of swirling around. One of these objects flew in front of the tether, and it's estimated that it could be about 5 miles across, this massive thing. So again, this highlights the fact that there's so much more going on than we realise. You know, in these sort of finer levels, there may be life forms in these finer levels. The orbs, as I mentioned, we're starting to see as well, but this sort of stuff too, it's incredible. Now, over the years, again, the formations have sort of tried to give particular messages, one thing or another. And this formation appeared in 1995 at, near Petersfield in Hampshire, and it actually depicts the orbits of the planets around the Sun. So you've got in the middle you have the Sun, and then you've got the orbit of Mercury with an elliptical orbit, which apparently it does have, then Venus, then the Earth, then Mars, then the asteroid belt, before you get out to Jupiter and beyond. Now again, this is in 95, so this is, you know, in the earlier days, as it were. It also, as I said earlier, if you notice, the orbits themselves are actually standing crop. They're not indented. It's much easier if you hoax it to indent the circles rather than have them standing. But also, you've probably noticed as well, if you look at the third orbit out, the orbit of the Earth, it doesn't actually show a planet. So a lot of people were at that time were saying, what's going on here? Is it trying to depict the fact that we are heading towards an environmental change, a collapse? Is it trying to say that? Other people were feeling that the planet herself is about to go through a transformation, a bit like an ascension process. So she would go to a higher dimensional level and not be visible on the third dimensional level. But you can imagine the debate that rages within the crop formation world when these sort of things were appearing. But this is another one that actually that also relates to ascension as well. This amazing formation appeared on the 7th of July 2007 in the massive East Field at Alton Barnes in Wiltshire. And incredibly, the night that this appeared, there were a group of people doing a night watch using ordinary cameras but also infrared cameras, and as it was getting darker and darker, there was no formation in that field, and then because it's sort of virtually midsummer, basically there's only about an hour and a half of complete darkness, and at that point, in the middle of that complete darkness, there was a flash of light which illuminated the whole of the valley, and it actually sent an electromagnetic spike into the infrared camera. Then as it started to get light, they could see that there was a massive formation that was in the field. Wyn Keach is the guy that was doing the infrared photography, and he estimates that formation probably appeared within a matter of a few minutes. Definitely not possible for it to be created, you know, with ropes and planks of wood. It would take you too long to do that. So it's incredible. It's about 1,000 feet long by about 500 feet wide. You see there's some people walking down the tram line there, give you an idea of how big these things are. But what's incredible is, if you look at it from this end here, the image is actually based on the Om, and the Om relates to the total consciousness of God, everything there ever was, is and shall be, from waking consciousness to sleeping consciousness to dreaming consciousness. But also, because it appeared on the 7th of July 2007, in numerology, that's 777, and as I say, in numerology, 777 relates to the ascension process. So you have this incredible formation appearing in a flash of light that relates to the consciousness of God and to ascension. You know, the formations were now stepping up to really high levels of education. Now, the following year, that was pretty impressive. Well, that's just to show you the actual Om symbol, which again relates not only to the consciousness of God, but also to the consciousness of the self, where you have like the lower self based out of the solar plexus, and then through to the crown, and then the sort of the higher self and the eternal self beyond that. So as I say, that image was, you know, we're talking God, you're talking the consciousness of God, ascension, and also the eternal self. This is big stuff. So then the following year, in August of 2008, near a place called Etchilhampton, near Devizes in Wiltshire, this amazing formation appeared. To me, this is one of the most beautiful. As you look at it, you'll see it's so perfect, it looks like a laser cut in woodblock, and yet this is a massive formation in a field. It's not only as if, you know, precise enough the actual sort of Celtic crucifix image itself, but if you notice, it's got a border of standing crop that runs all the way around it. And then beyond that, another layer of laid crop. And as you look at that, you see it's perfect all the way around. How on earth could you do that with ropes and planks of wood? It's just not possible. This again is another image of that. This is one of Steve Alexander's pictures, where you see it within the landscape. It's huge. It's not running in line with the tram lines. It's oblique to that. It's about 600 feet across by 800 feet in length. It's a massive formation. There's a person standing in the middle of that little black dot. It's about the equivalent of 2.5 football pitches in length. It's a massive formation. Now, what was amazing was when that appeared on the 15th of August 2008. At the very same time, in the States, in Ohio, there was actually a conference being held on the Turin Shroud, which the cloth that wrapped Christ after the crucifixion when he was laid in the tomb. This full-length cloth, 14 foot by 4 foot length cloth. So the people that were speaking there, some of them were the original STURP team, which stands for the Shroud of Turin Research Project, that did the research on the shroud back in 1978. You know, you've got physicists, you've got pathologists, forensic scientists, nuclear physicists, photographers, etc. All the researchers that did the original scientific research into the shroud all concluded that it was authentic. And I mean, I've done a couple of decades of research in it. I can't go into it in depth, but you know, to me the shroud is genuine. So for a formation like that to appear at the same time as a shroud conference in the state is sort of sending quite a powerful message. Then that was in 2008. 2 years later, in 2010, they actually had the exposition of the shroud at the cathedral in Turin, and you know, these are really sort of prestigious events. There was something like 2 million pilgrims that came to see this, right at the time that volcano, that Icelandic volcano, was going off as well. So I'm sure a lot of people couldn't even make it there because of that. But this is the shroud here. It's about 14-foot length being displayed, so people could actually see the shroud. Now, just to highlight an aspect of the shroud for you, it's again, it's a full-length cloth with the full-length body images on it. Forensically, it's got the rare AB blood. It's definitely from the body of a person that was crucified, in fact. But it has this incredible photographic-like image, which even modern science cannot replicate, despite what hoaxers or debunkers will tell you. And it's like a perfect negative. So it's only when you look at the negative you actually see it like a photograph, like a positive image. But as I say, there's the full-length back area. The cloth came over, and then the full length at the front as well. But the face area, this is just the face. You can see it's very fine. It's in a way it's like crop formations. There's only effect of the topmost fibrils, a sort of a microscopic change to create that image, which is a perfect negative. And you've got the blood flows here from the crown of thorns. This is the back of the head area with the crown of thorns blood flows as well, this rare AB blood. So, as I say, you had that formation that appeared at the time of the Shroud Conference in 2008. You now have the exposition of the shroud itself, and then just a few weeks later appeared these two formations, which are they were in West Berkshire, which is quite unusual for the crop formations, and yet they're straddled on both sides of the M4 motorway here. These are a couple of trucks, so it gives you an idea of the size of these formation. But basically, research was sort of looking at as though these are, like I just showed you, the subtle image of the face of Christ on the shroud. The front of the face image here, again, subtle as it is, with the eyes, etc. And across on the other side, as if highlighting the fact that this is over here and that's there, as it is on the shroud, two images, was like the back of the head area, back of the head image. So this is more close up, just the sort of the front of the face. It's very subtle image here. And then on the other side of the motorway, you have this sort of back of the head area with like the blood flows from the crown of thorns into the hair, as it is on the actual shroud. Now, what is amazing is, where this appeared, it was very close to a village that was actually called World's End. So I don't know if it's trying to highlight something here or not, but what is of interest is right next to that is another village called Peasmore. And there are whistleblowers that have come out and said that at Peasmore there is a deep underground military base, and in there are some military are working with extra